Good evening, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World News Tonight, live from Warsaw. Another night of Russian terror in Kyiv has left 13 dead and dozens wounded. Can Ukraine count on more help as the world's focus shifts from it to Israel and Iran? We'll have more on that in a moment, but first let's take a look at the latest headlines. Poland launches evacuations from Israel. GPS disruptions over the Baltic Sea linked to Russian hybrid activity. And the EU plans to squeeze out Russian gas with tough new rules. Last night, the Russian aerial attack on Kyiv resulted in 13 dead and more than 150 wounded. One of the victims was an American citizen. It's bad when the powerful of this world turn a blind eye, stated President Zelenskyy, as the world's attention has shifted from Ukraine to the Middle East. And so we're joined now by our correspondent Oz in Kyiv. Good evening, Oz. So is the capital city bracing for yet another night of terror?
Well, these attacks have been coming through in regularity on Ukraine. Now, hundreds of drones being used per attack, 440 in this attack, 32 missiles targeting Ukraine, many of them targeting the Ukrainian capital. Overnight, 27 different locations hit in 8 different districts. Over my apartment, there was air defense engaged throughout the night for several hours. So this was a really sustained and prolonged attack by the Russians on the Ukrainian capital. As you said, 13 people killed there. 2 people also killed, 2 women killed in Odessa in the south of Ukraine in these attacks. So it wasn't just the Ukrainian capital that was targeted, but the Ukrainian capital bore the brunt of the overnight attacks. Now, President Zelenskyy condemned them in the morning before setting off for the G7. Calling them one of the most horrific attacks on Kyiv since the war began. Let's take a listen to the end of his statement released in the morning following those attacks.
Such attacks are pure terrorism, and the whole world, the United States and Europe, must finally respond as a civilized society responds to terrorists. Putin does this solely because he can afford to continue the war. He wants the war to go on. It is wrong when the powerful of this world turn a blind eye to it. We are in contact with all partners at every possible level to ensure an appropriate response. It is the terrorists who must feel the pain, not innocent, peaceful people.
A day of mourning has been declared in Ukraine tomorrow following these attacks. However, with Zelenskyy now meeting his allies, there's going to be a growing concern about Ukraine's ability to fend off these attacks if Russia is launching routinely more than 400 drones onto the territory of Ukraine, really stretching Ukraine's already pretty stretched air defenses. They're going to be wanting more support from their allies in that region. But right now, all of the eyes are on the Middle East and Ukraine, despite 15 people being killed, 15 civilians being killed in Russian attacks, is struggling to get the attention it wants from world leaders with regards to air defense missiles in particular, which have been diverted from the United States to Israel in recent days. Back to you in the studio.
That was Oz reporting from Kyiv. Thank you very much, Oz, and stay safe. We did everything I had to do on G7, said Donald Trump as he left early for Washington, cancelling a meeting with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelenskyy. This puts into question the future of US military support for the war-torn country, which Zelenskyy was hopeful to discuss on Tuesday. Piotr Miszczuk reports on an unexpected turn of events at the G7 summit in Canada.
President Zelenskyy has arrived in Kananaskis, Canada.
We are ready for the peace negotiations, unconditional ceasefire. I think it's very important, but for this we need pressure. And of course I want to speak with Prime Minister today about sanctions, additional sanctions.
But he's not going to meet up with Donald Trump, who unexpectedly cut his participation in the G7 summit short, leaving over reasons, quote, much bigger than the Israel-Iran conflict. Trump expressed his content with the outcome of the get-together.
We did everything I had to do on the G7. We had a good G7. We signed a deal with the European Union, phase one of a deal, but we signed a deal with the UK.
Day 2 of the summit was meant to see a pivotal meeting between Trump and Zelenskyy. Trump's surprising departure, however, thwarted Zelensky's plan to strike an arms purchase deal with the US.
We are not talking to America today about new assistance. Indeed, one of the issues I will discuss with President Trump at the meeting is the defense package that Ukraine is ready to buy. And we will talk about it with him, and I am sure that we will have such an opportunity, or at least I hope so.
But from the get-go, Trump said Russia needn't have been expelled from G8 and claimed he would have never allowed the war in Ukraine to break out.
They threw Russia out, which I claimed was a very big mistake. Even though I wasn't in politics then, I was very loud about it. It was a mistake in that you spend so much time talking about Russia, and he's no longer at the table, so it makes life more complicated. But you wouldn't have had the war.
Some expected the G7 would serve as a platform to hold group-wide discussions on introducing devastating sanctions on Russia. Though these won't materialize with Trump's early exit, economist Felix Schmidt told TVP World that there's hope for EU-wide measures and a wider agreement in the near future.
To have sanctions which are really working, it's very important to have the US on board. It's the biggest economy, it's the most powerful country. That's highly important. We will have a NATO summit coming up also this month. Maybe there is more time to talk something on sanctions on Russia. But the European Union, together with, of course, United Kingdom, they can work out something by themselves.
Next week, the European Union is slated to adopt the 18th package of sanctions against Russia that would further cripple the country's banking, military and energy sectors. Meanwhile, in the US, a bipartisan proposal to impose 500% tariffs on countries buying Russian energy may pass the Senate later this week if it gets the green light from the White House. For TVP World, I'm Piotr Miszczuk.
With the conflict in the Middle East rapidly escalating, the Polish government is sending 2 planes to bring home some 200 of its citizens from Israel. Warsaw is also pulling out some of its diplomatic personnel from Iran, as Donald Trump urges the inhabitants of Tehran to evacuate the city. Kazimierz Łysiak has this report.
As Israel and Iran continue to exchange fire, the government in Warsaw is sending planes to evacuate Polish citizens from the danger zone.
Based on the applications in the evacuation system, we decided to send 2 aircraft. One will be taking off from Jordan and another will be a charter flight from Egypt.
I'm happy to be going back, but sad at the same time to leave my friends behind and leave the place that I love so much.
Polish embassy are organizing, our return home to Poland, because the airport is closed and borders also.
Close to 200 Poles will be evacuated aboard these planes. The government in Warsaw is also pulling out some of the non-essential staff from its diplomatic post in Iran, following the example of the United States. This move is crucial, especially in the face of warnings such as these from US President Donald Trump.
Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran.
After these comments, Trump abruptly left the G7 summit in Canada on Tuesday. And while French President Emmanuel Macron suggested it was to work on a ceasefire, the US President dismissed this claim on the plane back home.
We're not looking for a ceasefire. I didn't say I was looking for a ceasefire. That was Emmanuel, nice guy, but he doesn't get it right too often. But we're looking for better than a ceasefire.
And what's better than a ceasefire in Donald Trump's book? A complete end to the fighting, with Iranian nuclear ambitions nipped in the bud as the cherry on top. And the US leader is doubling down on the pressure on Tehran.
I've been negotiating. I told them to do the deal. They should have done the deal. The cities have been blown to pieces. We've lost a lot of people. They should have done the deal. I told them, do the deal. So I don't know, I'm not too much in the mood to negotiate.
An analyst from a Polish Middle East think tank, Elias Agili-Dechnavi, told TVP World that Israel's strikes on Iran just ahead of the planned negotiations between Washington and Iran are hardly a coincidence.
Putting together the different parts of the puzzle, we can see that is all part of a bigger plan. Now the Iranians are also receiving and at the same time sending signals to Washington to rebuild a new phase of negotiation.
If those hostages...
As Trump hints at possibly sending one of his top envoys, Steve Witkoff, and Vice President J.D. Vance to the talks with the Iranians, the intense exchange of fire between Israel and Iran carries on.
Donald Trump has explicitly mentioned that they have already drafted a new pact for the negotiation, but we'll have to wait and we'll have to see. I repeat myself, we have to wait and see the outcome of the urgent meeting he had with his advisors.
More than a dozen Israelis have been killed in the barrage so far, while hundreds more have lost their lives in Iran, including some top Iranian commanders. For TVP World, I'm Kazimierz Łysiak.
Polish officials claim that the GPS disruptions recently observed in the Baltic region are caused by Russia's hybrid sabotage operations. TVP World's Sasha Farbach went to the Polish seaside to investigate what makes private drones fly away in unknown directions.
It's the beginning of the summer. It's a busy season. It's about holidays. It's about going to the beach. But we've also at the same time heard strange reports across the North Polish coast around Gdynia and Gdańsk about drones going uncontrollably in different directions, also crashing and falling into the sea. Now, this has also come to the attention of Polish authorities, who will likely point the finger at the Kremlin.
Several weeks ago, a special safety committee convened to address this issue. General Maciej Klisz, the operational commander, prepared a series of recommendations for military aviation. We also provided all the information to civil aviation, flight control and the Polish Air Navigation Services Agency. We are witnessing these disturbances. They are occurring over the Baltic Sea, affecting our NATO allies in the Baltic and Nordic countries. We are responding. According to our sources, these actions are related to the Russian Federation's activities, including sabotage.
Authorities have also appealed to the public that if you are a drone owner, not to fly them over the course of the next few days, just to wait and see if there's more information available until investigations continue, and to be vigilant. But at the same time, asking locals here on the coast during their holiday and also tourists of what they think about this, we received a mixed response to the news that we've been reporting.
Up until now, I hadn't even thought about it. It never occurred to me to think about it.
We're afraid. With so much insecurity around the world, we're worried that something might happen here too. We're not afraid. We feel safe.
Now, GPS jamming has already happened before, and it seems to be emanating in the past also from Kaliningrad, that Russian enclave there. And it's also been very disturbing for ship traffic, navigation, and also some air traffic at the same time. Now, whether that is a conclusive link, they will have to wait and see. But it also means that even during the summer, authorities need to be continually vigilant. Sasha Farbach from the Polish seacoast for TVP World.
Poland is modernizing its army in face of a looming threat from Russia. From now on, Polish pilots will be training on US-made Apache helicopters. Leading NATO in defense spending, Warsaw intends to convince the rest of the bloc to reach the 5% GDP threshold at the fast-approaching summit in The Hague. Sonia Gatabishchan reports.
Sky's the limit in advancing Poland's military capabilities. The first of 8 leased AH-64D Apache attack helicopters arrived in Poland from the United States.
Poland is a frontline state. Poland is threatened from the east. This threat is serious, and we must respond to it quickly.
The lease of the 8 helicopters is supplementary to Poland's purchase of more modern 96 AH-64E Apache helicopters. These leased aircraft are intended for training to ensure the aviation brigade is prepared for the arrival of the advanced versions scheduled between 2028 and 2032.
The integration of these future Echo Apache helicopters into Poland's arsenal is a generational upgrade for Poland and for the defensive capabilities of NATO's eastern flank.
The development comes ahead of the NATO summit in The Hague next week. Poland plans to use the occasion to invite allies to increase their defense spending in light of the Russian threat.
We will support efforts to increase defence spending to 5% of GDP. That is our programme, that is the US's programme. It is a programme that gives the chance of the highest levels of security.
The importance of advancing defense capabilities in the current geopolitical landscape is not lost on the European Commission either. On Tuesday, it presented the Defense Readiness Omnibus, measures to speed up defense investments and production in the EU.
Now we need rules that give industry, armed forces and investors speed, predictability and scale. And this omnibus is a legal vehicle that adapts peacetime legislation to current geopolitics.
Among other things, Omnibus aims to introduce a fast-track permitting regime, cutting approval time for defense projects that may currently take several years down to 60 days. It also seeks to reduce administrative burdens in the European Defense Fund and enable greater participation of Ukrainian entities. For TVP World, I'm Sonia Gatabishchan.
Russian gas could stop flowing into the EU as early as next year. This is if a bold plan spearheaded by the European Union's Energy Commissioner, Dan Jurgensen, picks up steam and is supported by enough member states. Our EU correspondent Angela Skujins reports from Brussels.
The European Commission wants its 27 EU member states to quit Russian energy by 2027. This includes oil, gas and nuclear over the next few years. Now, the man with the plan is the European Commissioner for Energy, Dan Jurgensen, who outlined the legal contours of the proposal at a press conference in Strasbourg on Tuesday. Now, if enough member states support the proposal, that being 15 out of the 27, some of the impacts of this plan could be felt as early as next year.
We introduce an import ban on Russian gas in a stepwise approach. First, imports under new contracts will be banned as of the end of this year. At a later stage, we phase out all remaining imports under existing contracts, including long-term contracts. This will lead to a full phase-out of Russian gas by the end of 2027.
Member states will have until March next year to provide the European Commission their energy diversification plans. If they don't, we heard that Commissioner threaten legal consequences for any that are out of step with the wills of the European Council. Now, the 27 EU heads of state will meet in Brussels late next week for a summit where they're expected to debate and vote on the matter. As I said earlier, only 15 out of the 27 need to support the measure, as it is a trade and energy issue. Now, we've already heard strident pushback from both Hungary and Slovakia. They consume cheap Russian gas and are friendly with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico even went as far as stating that he would derail the 18th sanctions package against Russia if there is not a solution found to what he claims to be an impending energy crisis. Both of these Central European countries have claimed that if they outlaw Russian energy by that date, they may be facing soaring energy prices as well as rolling blackouts. But what is certain is that the EU is keen to get this plan cooking with gas. Angela Skujins from Brussels for TVP World.
As the Czech government faces a no-confidence vote, which may result in snap election, former Prime Minister Andrej Babiš wants to attract young voters with his brand new merchandise. Hoodies, jackets and T-shirts all stamped with his initials and catchphrases. John Todd reports on the latest from Prague.
Mean, moody and menacing. It's not a look many former prime ministers can pull off. But Andrej Babiš is not just any other ex-PM. He's a successful businessman battling to return to the Czech Republic's hot seat in October's election. It comes as the current government, led by Conservative Prime Minister Petr Fiala, faced a no-confidence vote on Tuesday over a Bitcoin scandal. This followed the Justice Ministry's acceptance of a $47 million donation of the digital currency from an ex-convict. It's the fourth no-confidence motion since the government took office in 2021. The latest poll puts Babish's ANO party on 34.5%. The Spolo Alliance trails on 21%, which is in coalition with the centrist Stan, who were backed by 12%, with the far-right SPD at 10.5%. So why the new clothing line from Babiš? Analysts say the former Communist Party member is looking to change his old image and appeal to Gen Z, fishing for hundreds of thousands of potential key young voters.
The main reason why they are doing this is that they precisely want to break this picture and just like present themselves in a new way, also to be also acceptable for the younger generation.
Analysts note that Babiš has been trying to boost electoral support by adopting anti-democratic, anti-Western and anti-EU positions. They caution it is too early to say what a coalition between his ANO and the far-right SPD might look like should they team up.
Maybe it is a kind of Trumpish syndrome again, because Trump in his first presidency was less rabid than he is now. Maybe this will also happen and Babiš will be much worse than when he showed a certain amount of pragmatism during his first government.
Prague has been staunchly supportive of Ukraine in the war with Russia. The Czech Republic may not lurch towards illiberalism seen in Hungary and Slovakia, but it could slide there quietly. Babiš is keeping his coalition options open, but the path of least resistance may lead to the far right. John Todd for TVP World.
Uncertainty reigns today in Kyiv after Donald Trump left the G7 summit in Canada ahead of the planned meeting with Volodymyr Zelenskyy. The two leaders were to discuss more arms deliveries to Ukraine, and to talk about it and more, we're joined by Andras Umland, analyst at the Stockholm Center for Eastern European Studies. Good evening.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for accepting our invitation. So Volodymyr Zelenskyy wanted to meet with the US president to discuss buying a military package from the US. Buying a military package from the US, not just receiving it, right? Then Donald Trump left for the apparently for the Situation Room in the White House. Now, was this just a pure coincidence?
That's difficult to say. Perhaps indeed Trump was not very eager to meet Zelenskyy. The problem for Trump with this whole Russia and Ukraine thing is that he would probably rather like to make friends with Putin again and have perhaps some deal with him and some meeting. The problem is, however, that Ukraine remains popular among ordinary Americans, that the American help for Ukraine remains popular, and that puts Trump, who I think doesn't care about Ukraine, he cares much more about Russia, in a difficult position. Also, in view of the next midterm elections, the Republicans have now a certain interest, because of this popularity of Ukraine among the American public, that the US will actually behave more or less decently towards Ukraine. And that's why he perhaps was not leaving the summit because of Zelenskyy, but he was perhaps not very eager to see Zelenskyy either.
All right. Now, there were 13 dead and dozens more injured in Russia's overnight attack on Kyiv. One of the victims, the fatal victims, was an American citizen. Now, the question is, could this have a potential impact on Washington?
I wish it would, but frankly, I don't think it will change that much. This administration, I think, does not, look at these sort of things, but rather deals at sort of transactions. If this American victim becomes a big topic, perhaps, in American media, then I could imagine that it could have a certain effect. But perhaps Trump would then say, well, that's why Ukraine has to capitulate. so that no Americans are anymore killed by Russian missiles in Kyiv. I could well imagine some argument like this.
Let me quote President Trump. You're talking about billions and billions of dollars. Sanctions are not that easy. It's not just a one-way street. That's Donald Trump when asked about more restrictions to be put on Russia. Well, I've checked it, and in 2024, the US, the bilateral trade between the US and Russia amounted to $3.5 billion with the $3 billion US trade deficit. Well, that clearly means that, the US is buying much more from Russia. Well, it's, as Donald Trump would put it, it's a bad business for the US. Why, therefore, is he defending so much this bilateral trade between the two countries?
Yes, this is indeed just a smokescreen. I would say anybody who understands a little bit the Western trade in general knows that Russia actually plays a very small role. Even if you took Germany before the large-scale invasion, the picture was often that Germany was a major trading partner of Russia. But if you looked at the actual data, Russia was a third-rate trading partner for Germany, but played in mass media a large role. So this bilateral trade between the US and Russia is even smaller, and also now, of course, already partly under sanctions. But I would admit, though, that the secondary sanctions that the US could be applying to countries that are trading with Russia could have also certain negative repercussions for the US. But the US is a large economy, and I'm not sure that this calculation about billions and billions of dollars is true. I could imagine that this is something just made up by Trump to justify why he's not supporting this project that has been actually developed in the Senate by not only Democrats but also by prominent Republicans like Lindsey Graham. So he's now looking for ways to not impose these sanctions, and they're talked about a lot, but so far it doesn't look like actually these sanctions are ever going to be effective.
Well, to be fair, when asked about sanctions, Donald Trump says he does not exclude more of them in the future, but he wants the EU to do it first. So will the 18th sanctions package be adopted next week to encourage Donald Trump?
I hope so. It will be. The main problems here are Hungary and Slovakia, but I would hope that there will be a solution found, as there has been in the past with Hungary. So these sanctions are in any way not only because of the American encouragement necessary, but also because of the promises that Western leaders, including, for instance, Chancellor Scholz had given recently when there was talk about a ceasefire, and Merz and others have been, Merz, of course, not Scholz, have been threatening Russia with sanctions. So these sanctions have to come because otherwise the EU will lose further its face.
And lastly, the US, according to Russia's foreign ministry spokesperson, the US has cancelled another round of bilateral talks with Russia. Now, what to make of it?
I found that also interesting, and I wonder what is behind that, because that was one of the sort of achievements that Trump claimed to have, that there would be now a new relationship between the US and Russia. But if now even the diplomatic relations are not restored, then even that as achievement will not be there. So I'm puzzled by this. I would have thought that this will actually that these diplomatic relations will be reestablished, because that is something that Trump has announced and that his administration is interested in, and that probably Russia is also interested in.
Yeah, but just to remind our viewers, those are not peace talks, just simply normalization talks between the two powers. Andras Umland, analyst at the Stockholm Center for Eastern European Studies, was our guest this evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me again.
And thank you for watching, and stay with us for much more here on TVP World.